My Gavanan Melanin. Today, I think it's time for a rant. I don't intend to make rants a regular feature of my channel, but there's some things I want to address regarding a previous episode we've seen. It has to do with the double weight sword and the Pell training that we see from the manuscript written by Vegetius in around the 5th century AD, the Roman writer. First, a bit of background about the Western martial arts. It's important to understand that the Western martial arts is a pretty recent thing on a large-scale popular basis. It's only been around for probably 20 years, and the intent is, or was originally, to look at period manuscripts from the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, wherever it can be found, to help understand the actual techniques of using a sword, which in a lot of ways we've lost. If you go to college, you have the option of taking a class in foil, which is a sport. Fencing. The techniques have very little in common with period swordsmanship. And the intent with Western martial arts, or HEMA, people will abbreviate that way, is to bring back or save or reconstruct the actual techniques that were used in the old days, sort of modeled on the Eastern martial arts, Kenjutsu, Iaido, and so on. Although those are living traditions that have been carried on from earlier periods, we have sort of lost that thread, and the intent of the Western martial arts is to reconnect that thread to the extent it's possible. It requires a lot of objectivity, a lot of humility, a lot of research, and a lot of workouts. It's not just taking the master's word for granted, but in thinking and experimenting. So it's appealing to me in that respect. Okay, on to the waster. Where's the waster I have here? Here we go. This is a waster, and it's 2 pounds 14 ounces. And this sword is a hair over 2 pounds itself. So this is not exactly twice the weight, but it's badly balanced and it's a chore to handle. It's been remarked online that this training with a double weight sword makes you slower. And I admit that picking up something that's twice as heavy as a real sword is going to slow you down. That's natural. By the same token, picking up something that's half the weight, this is a waster, and it weighs a hair over 1 pound. Now, that's actually the weight of a foil. Foils are regulated at about 500 grams, sometimes even lighter. Now, it's well known that if you use a foil to try to replicate, say, rapier techniques, you'll fail. Why is that? The tempo is different. So if you say that training with a double weight sword, what happens is the tempo is different. Of course it's different. This is not that kind of training, it's weight training. You are using, let's say, avoiding quoting specific laws of physics. If I have a mass that's not in motion, it has specific inertia, and my muscles are recruited to overcome that inertia and cause acceleration. Once that acceleration begins, the muscles are not required in that thing. So overcoming that zero movement, overcoming the inertia, is important. And of course, stop it at the end of its path is also important. You're using the same muscles that you do with this. If you're doing it correctly. There's right ways and wrong ways. Got a bone to pick though, using something as light as this in reconstructing the martial arts that is not weighted in the same way as the actual weapon. And this is a very good reproduction of a historical weapon. The weight is correct, the balance is correct, the distal taper, all those things are there. Using this, you're basically in that world. You can actually understand the techniques. Picking up something that's like this, a couple of things will happen. You'll encounter what we'll call cognitive dissonance, where you're saying, I don't understand the technique because I could do some other things that aren't in the effect book. Why aren't they in the effect book? Because this is a lighter weapon. This is a foil, basically speaking. And, of course, practicing with a waster that's lighter than the accurate weapon is going to develop bad habits. More so than using the double weight sword. Why is that? You'll spend more time with this. You'll spend most of your training time in the Western martial arts. Whilst you're sparring a lot, will you be using a waster? This is traditional to use a wooden sword to represent the weapon. It's cheaper, it's lighter, it's less intimidating for new folks, but if you're not lifting up a similar weapon, you're in trouble. A waster, you're not going to do all the time. A runner, for instance, is not going to squat weights all the time. They're just going to do that to enhance their muscle strength temporarily. They're going to spend most of their time running because they're runners, so they're going to do something similar to what they expect to do in competition. So one thing I want to say is if you're using a waster, make sure it's as close as possible to the weight of the actual sword. Now, people will actually use sparring swords. Let's say sparring swords, although sparring is a difficult term to use with swords. It's an accepted term though. If I'm putting on my helmet, putting on some sort of armor to replicate the actual man-to-man combat that we expect in this Western martial art, to further understand, you also want to use a similar weight. Going back to single-handed swords, this particular one is made by a gentleman named Lance Chan in Hong Kong. His company is Realistic Sparring Weapons, and this is a scarily authentic replica. I mean, it doesn't look like that. It's wrapped with duct tape and stuff like that. But pick it up, close your eyes, you will think you've got a real weapon in your hand. The balance is the same. Look at that. It's 2 pounds, 8 ounces. And I have a little trouble hurting myself with this. Excuse me. Not easy to hurt yourself. Not easy. It's not easy to hurt yourself with this. It's not easy to hurt somebody else with this. It doesn't require a lot of armor. I've sparred with children using this thing, and there's no problem. The benefit is that you are using tempo that is appropriate to that sword technique, whatever that is. If you're talking about using this sword, something similar to this, a single-handed, type 10, type 11 sword or whatever, you're simulating something like this, you're understanding the tempo is. Now, if you're not in the Western martial arts, if it's new to you, tempo is the Italian word for time. So understand that if I move my sword a certain way, my opponent moves their sword a certain way. I might want to move around this way to evade their counter. That requires a certain amount of time. Tempo of the hand, I move my body, I move whatever I have to do. Any movement requires time, and that's always considered during the Western martial arts or any sword play, or really any sort of combat where you have a punch which is going to consume time to get to a certain place. The tempo is changed. So certain period techniques will work correctly when using the right weight of sword. However, you'll find with something like this that's only about a pound, you won't be able to get that because the other guy can go boom with a 1 pound sword. But moving a 2 or 3 pound sword is going to be a little bit different, just enough to make a millisecond or so, well, not a quarter second or so difference, and that's all often is required in a combat. So to sum up, I think the double weight sword is a useful training tool. Consider this: the time between the writing of De Re Militari by Vegetius in the 5th century AD and its copy, the Poem of the Pell, in the 15th century AD. This was a bloody period. This is the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. They've gone through all that. Sword combat was not foreign to them. They were not children playing around with sticks in the backyard. They actually saw people coming back from the battlefield with the victims' bloods on their hands. So they were familiar with what works, what didn't work. So this technique, training with the Pell, training with a double weight sword, survived 1,000 years, enough to where people would consider translating the De Re Militari into 15th century English. So from a martial arts, or Western martial arts point of view, I think it's incumbent upon us to dose ourselves with a little bit of humility and say, maybe they knew what they were talking about. Let's try this. Instead of seeing how this doesn't work, let's see how it does work and see how it might have been used by them to enhance their training. Now, one final word I want to say is that when I hand something like this to a sparring partner who is completely green, it's a single-handed sword, and it's only 2 pounds and change, but so many people will pick it up and try to use it with 2 hands. Because holding a one-handed sword with 1 hand is a little bit out of our, experience level. The wrist and hand action that's required for the sword needs to be developed, I think. And so there may be a case for handing a totally beginner a really light sword to start with. But I'm going to go into some detail about specific training for strengthening the specific muscles and muscle groups that'll help you handle the sword in a more effective and authentic manner. And that's all I wanted to say right now. I'm going to develop something else that'll show you how to do this, but that's going to be in a future episode. Stay tuned. And again, thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with my rant. Hope you learned something. Hope this triggered some discussion. I want to open up some ideas, and I think the beauty of the Western martial arts is a conversation. It's discovering, it's experimenting, it's playing with the original sources and trying to understand what that was back then, and not assuming that we know everything, because we really don't. And we're really glad that our friends are not coming back from the battlefield with their enemies' blood on their swords. And to be appreciative of that. Alright, thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and stay tuned for more episodes.